going live in week 5, and we've got Matt Waldman, Gene Bramall, Sigmund Bloom here, as we're on the verge of another exciting, enlightening, sometimes confusing week of NFL action. And as always, we're going to touch on some of the key injury situations around the league. We're going to look at some matchups and otherwise get primed for this week coming up. And I guess, Gene, when we start with this week, we start with quarterbacks. We're getting to that point where the war of attrition builds up, and we've got some quarterback injuries, starting out with Marcus Mariota. There was some optimism that he could play this week, but as we get to Sunday morning, not so much optimism.
Yeah, I don't think so. Ian Rappaport told people this morning on Twitter that Mariota's injury was originally given a 2 to 4 week timetable, which suggests that it's more than just a very minor low-grade strain. And it may be a little bit easier for a quarterback to play through that level of hamstring strain, but Mariota isn't the typical quarterback who stays in the pocket and maybe does a little bit of design rollout here or there. Although they haven't been quite as extensive in the run game as you might have expected with Mariota over the years, he's definitely somebody that they like to get out of the pocket and use some zone reads on. And Mike Mularkey said all week long that they didn't really want to risk any further injury. He'd have to protect himself in the pocket, Mariota would. And there really wasn't anything that you heard from the team or Mariota himself that suggested he was able to do that in practice this week. So both Mariota and Derek Carr, who we'll talk about here in a little bit, are pushing to play, but neither one of them are ready to play this week. And rather than put them in a situation where they may miss games in the future because they pushed it just a day or two too soon, it makes sense, and it seems like that's the way it's trending this morning, that we're going to see Matt Castle instead of Mariota.
So, Matt, how bad is that? I mean, how reluctant does that make you to play a DeMarco Murray or Rashard Matthews today? Or does the fact that they're going against a morose Miami team maybe make you think that they can get this run game on track despite Ndamukong Suh slamming down the door on them?
Yeah, I mean, it's a dicey situation, but you have to also look at that. When you look at what's successful with Tennessee Titans run game, it's often on the edges of the defense. So, if they're going to run at Cameron Wake, which I would do, that would probably be a good bet. Are their linebackers special? I don't think that they particularly are. So I look at this and I would say it's kind of a neutral matchup for Tennessee now that the quarterback situation is as it is. It would have been a much more positive one before that. So, I mean, if you have them and you're looking at one of these Tennessee Titans versus, a guy who might be starting this week or a guy who's might be splitting time this week, that's probably a better way to look at it. Give Titans the edge over guys that might be splitting time this week, like J.D. McKissick or Elijah McGuire or someone like that.
Aaron Jones.
Possibly, yes.
Right, guys like that. And it should be interesting. Well, what about the morose Miami side? Because we saw Adam Gase get it together around this time last year, but he wasn't necessarily dealing with a quarterback whose personality seems to be casting a shadow on this unit. That Tennessee's a beatable defense in the secondary, and Miami has the wide receivers to create matchups, but can Cutler take advantage of them? Is this the week Cutler turns the corner?
I don't think he may not turn the corner, or he may turn the corner and then go down another street that we ask what's on that street. So it's much like the metaphor of psychotherapy right there for the on the couch thing. I mean, he's gonna turn the corner today and go, okay, I think we can handle this. But now we're going to head down another street after this game. But you could see Julius Thomas even turning the corner here and going, oh, wow, I'm back in Denver with Peyton Manning and no one's hitting me and I'm okay. And that may be, he may suddenly have a restart to his career for 1 week. And this offense, this cornerback tandem for Tennessee, it's not great. So you look at that, you look at the linebackers who are an open gate for tight ends. Looks like a good day for the Miami offense, if you ask me. It's just a matter, again, of whether or not they self-destruct. And this is a game where they're less likely to self-destruct than other weeks.
Yeah, we'll see how they respond to Adam Gase. I know he was storm and dronged in practice this week and otherwise trying to get the team's attention. Gene, let's take a stroll down E.J. Manuel Boulevard this week. At least it looks that way. Derek Carr, probably not going to go this afternoon.
Yeah, I don't think so. It's another situation where a quarterback may be trying to do a little bit more than his body's ready for. And I think, the Raiders in particular, every team I think is in a two-game run of divisional matchups coming up. But the Chiefs have the Chargers next week, the Raiders have the Chargers next week and the Chiefs the following week. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me anyway to put Carr in a situation where he takes another blow directly to that area and prolongs the recovery time potentially by a little bit worsening injury or continuing to have spasms to where he's not able to play in those situations. And, you can pad, you can put a vest, you can put flak jackets and Kevlar and all that sort of stuff up there, but you can't remove the pain from the muscle spasm that goes along with this, and any movement, it may precipitate some of those things. So, I know we're talking about Matt Castle and EJ Manuel, and every game is important and every player wants to play in every game. And this isn't a structural injury where he's necessarily to do a whole lot more damage. It's the concern of, would there be any compensatory issues? Probably not, but the muscle spasm could become something that could be a problem for him over the long term. So we're hearing both Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport say that Derek Carr and Marcus Mariota aren't going to play. And I think that was a likely outcome from the beginning of the week, and that's probably what we're going to see.
So, Matt, Amari Cooper, Michael Crabtree, Marshawn Lynch, you were expecting these guys to contribute week in, week out to your fantasy team. Amari Cooper's had Crabtree had one good week. Otherwise, they really haven't. Cooper had one acceptable week. Do we dabble in our Raiders with EJ Manuel going up against a Ravens defense that has either been a total shutdown defense or really a welcome mat whenever their offense puts them in a huge hole?
Well, if you're going by what you would expect is what the media is reporting, a heavy dose of Marshawn Lynch this weekend. So if we get a heavy dose of Marshawn Lynch this weekend, then what you would expect is what the Ravens are expecting. We're going to try and shut down Marshawn Lynch first and let EJ Manuel beat us. Well, EJ Manuel being still a young quarterback with some starting experience, but not really any starting experience with the Raiders, is going to do what most young quarterbacks should do, which is he's going to go to the open guy. He's going to try and find the open guy. Now, he may also lean on one person a little bit more than than a starting quarterback would, because he has a comfort level and in that situation. And I would anticipate the guy that would give them the most comfort level would be the best route runner on the team. And Michael Crabtree might still be one of the best route runners in the league. So I would say Crabtree I'd feel pretty good about. And then after that, you just hope that this Raider line is good enough that they give the ball enough to Marshawn Lynch that we can see what he can do against nine men boxes, because that's probably what we're going to see. Is we're going to see 9 men boxes in cover one, and we may see occasional blitzes here and there, and see if EJ Manuel can read the field well enough to contain what they do. And so those are the two guys that I would probably dabble in. The rest I would just stay away from.
Yeah, they got Eric Weddle, they got Tony Jefferson. By the way, on that note, on the offensive line for the Raiders, Gene, does it look like Gabe Jackson will go, or are we going to wait and find out?
I haven't seen anything specific other than the fact that he returned to a limited practice on Friday. The Raiders didn't really update his condition, so I'm calling him a game time decision. I think you'd probably lean toward him playing, but it's tough to know.
Yeah, and Brandon Williams on the Ravens side likely to be out, a big run stuffing tackle for them. And I don't think that his loss has been as big an effect on the run defense as facing 30 plus carries when the team is behind. Last quarterback to lead off, and this one's about tomorrow night, Gene. Sam Bradford. There's at least a chance, more than Carr, more than Mariota, that we see Bradford this week.
Yeah, and that surprised me this morning. It was a report from Stacey Dale's sideline reporter who's out there for the NFL Network, saying that she was told by sources that Bradford had taken most of the first team reps, and suggesting that the Vikings were planning on allowing him to play. And when I wrote my weekend game day expectations article yesterday afternoon and reviewing the notes of the week and seeing how things had progressed with Bradford, there were videos on Saturday of him throwing in sweats that didn't look much different than him throwing a couple of weeks ago. Where he didn't really want to follow through over that front knee. He really wasn't bouncing around and making any movements in the pocket. Mike Zimmer in his Saturday press conference said he didn't have any more confidence on Saturday in Bradford than he did on Thursday. Bradford hasn't practiced much in the last couple of weeks after taking a week off before. It just wasn't a lot that suggested that they were preparing him to play. I didn't see anything that from beat writers or anybody that would make you think that he was getting the majority of whatever first team reps the Vikings may have been using in their limited practice participation. So I think it's unlikely that he'll play, but that's an odd source to be getting some information from. Sideline reporters just don't drop those nuggets unless there's something they've been specifically told, and it comes from a person they trust. So I think we probably have to upgrade him in the sense that you might consider him a game time decision now. But I still don't think, I don't think it does the Vikings much good to put Bradford in the pocket. Even though it's not a great pass rushing team right now, but to put him in a pocket where there might be a situation where he can't protect himself, or where his downfield accuracy may not be what it should be. There may feel a little bit of pressure with Dalvin Cook out a little bit to keep pace with the two teams that are a game above them, Detroit and Green Bay. But again, they've got Green Bay coming up soon. I just don't see this happening on Monday night, but you have to at least consider where the source came from and give him a chance to play. But I think it's going to be Case Keenum again.
Yeah, you said consider it. So, Matt, on that note of consideration, if you had to, week 5, we got some good quarterbacks on by Matt Ryan, Drew Brees, Kirk Cousins. If you had to choose between a waiver wire pickup like a Josh McCown or a Jacoby Brissett going up against San Francisco, or Jay Cutler, who we just talked about, or you could wait around for Bradford, but if Bradford doesn't go, you'd have to play Case Keenum. Do you lean in either direction there? Does it all basically look like the same mishmash?
I think that this is a situation where Case Keenum and the matchup against the Bears is good enough that you could probably wait around and feel okay about that. But I think there are decent matchups here to be had. I think that Josh McCown knows Cleveland Browns defense. Well, it's the new defense with Williams, but I think Josh McCown knows the personnel reasonably well enough that could be decent. And then also, you look at Cutler. We talked about that last week. So I think the upside is higher to go on Sunday with the players that are available on Sunday. But if you don't want to have to drop a player that you really don't want to drop to get one of them, and you happen to have Case Keenum already, and you're not going to drop him as a switch, for one of these players, then yeah, just start Case Keenum, and I think that'll be fine for 1 week.
So give us the RSP guide, because the other side of this matchup that's interesting tomorrow night is Mitchell Trubisky's debut. Based on your dossier, what are you going to be watching? Not from a fantasy perspective or who's going to win this game perspective, but just out of the gate, his first start, a very tough defense. So we're going to grade him on a curve here that's at least going to give him that in consideration. We're not going to grade him too hard, but what are some things you're going to be watching for to see how he is compared to what you expected to see, knowing, like we talked about on the night of the draft, he would probably be put in before it would be the optimal time to put him in?
This is actually probably a good matchup for him, even though Minnesota's statistically a tough defense, because they play things pretty straight up. So which means that they're going to keep their base personnel on the field as much as possible. And that actually plays into the advantage for what the Bears want to do with Mitchell Trubisky, because Trubisky is a lot like Blake Bortles. He's a very mobile quarterback with a strong arm, and he's someone that can make plays when things break down. So, the thing that he's going to have to get better at, like Bortles, is reading the field and making mature decisions and not leaning too much on his physical ability. But what the Bears are going to be able to do that they haven't done with Mike Glennon is they're going to run a lot of plays, stretch plays to the outside with a lot of bootleg action where he can, work around to one side and have reads to make on one side of the field. And he makes those decisions there. And because the Vikings will play kind of a base set and say, we dare you to beat us, there are going to be times where Jordan Howard and Tariq Cohen will do enough to force the defense to overplay the run, and that will open up some of the passing lanes for Trubisky in that sense. And Trubisky's ability to run will also help out as long as he doesn't make any dumb decisions as a runner. So it's, I wouldn't look at Trubisky as having a 300-yard day and make any bets on him there, but can he possibly keep this game a little closer? Can he get some more receivers involved because of the play action component to the game in a way that is going to be more believable, and he can sell it and hit some easier plays downfield where there might be some coverage busts? Absolutely, that may happen. I think Zach Miller might not be a bad underneath sneaky play there, because he's such a good athlete when he's healthy, and you have him kind of working behind those linebackers. Even though we know Eric Kendricks is terrific in coverage, it's still a situation where Trubisky, what he does, puts pressure on a linebacker like that. So it's, that's not a bad play. And then I think the running backs are still good bets because of that play action component, especially in open space and the pressure that Tariq Cohen will put on those linebackers too. It's going to be kind of a give and take game with running back and tight end in that play action look.
And they've been competitive at home. Chicago, very competitive at home. The running backs have done well. The running game has got established well at home. And Trubisky could give them a emotional bounce. I think you could see with Mike Glennon, the team might not have had the utmost confidence in him. And then we did see Trubisky have a Dak Prescott-like preseason, looking very comfortable. And we know he's not going to err on the side of being timid out there. So we like that. As you've detailed for us, that Ben Roethlisberger-esque useful hard-headedness, useful obliviousness to what's going on around him. So that's going to be fun to watch. Looking forward to a game that's going to be fun to watch. And Matt, you and I discussed this one, but Gene, I'm going to ask you about Wendell Smallwood going into this Philadelphia-Arizona game. And more than this week where it looks like he's ruled out, and we'll see Sunrod's, I think he's great nephew, LeGarrette Blount, get a lot more work. I believe the Eagles turn around and play on Thursday. So should we have a similar outlook for Wendell Smallwood this Thursday going against the Panthers? If he can't play on Sunday, how could he play the following Thursday?
That may be part of the reason he's not playing today, is that they know they have a short week coming up and they want him available the following week. But it's hard to know. I think I said it was Reuben Frank on Thursday night that had reported some of Wendell Smallwood's injuries. It was actually Les Bowen. And they think that the swelling may be related to some looseness in his knee that's still left over from last year's MCL injury. And that's not that uncommon when ligaments scar down. Sometimes they scar down tightly and you have to work through some of that scarring issues. Sometimes they scar a little bit more loosely and there's some more play there. So I don't know if they're planning on doing some special tape jobs or maybe allowing him to use a brace in the future, but they've got to get some of the inflammation calmed down first to allow him to play. So it's not, if that's accurate, I think it means two things. One, it's probably not going to be a long-term situation. I think it's possible and maybe even likely that he participates on Thursday night, knowing that, again, there's another 10 days after to recover from whatever after effects there may be. But it also means if there's some residual laxity in that joint, that this is going to be an ongoing issue for him in future weeks and potentially even future years. So he'll always be at risk of a little bit of a flare-up if they don't figure out how to limit the risk of that happening. So I think there's a chance he plays this week, or the following week rather, coming up on Thursday night, but something that we're going to have to watch, see how things go with the injury report, see how the Eagles plan to handle him both in practice and in games going forward.
Matt, I'll ask you just for my own, I'll take this moment to use my power as the host of the show and say we haven't talked about Andre Ellington that much. And as I've been watching it, I feel like the game has caught up to what Ellington had to offer in his rookie year. And we got John Brown getting healthier. John Brown's doing some things, Larry Fitzgerald, but it really seems like these last 2 weeks, Carson Palmer and Andre Ellington are doing some of the same things they were doing in Ellington's rookie year. And Ellington was making some fantastic plays. And he was one of those original mismatch backs where they would get him split out wide. You would see him motor past the safety or linebacker trying to cover him. And around the fantasy circles, there hasn't been that much talk about Andre Ellington. We've seen Andre Ellington show what he can do on a football field, and it's significant, but he fell out of favor with Bruce Arians, and it seems like Bruce Arians now is willing to embrace him. In this era of fantasy football now where PPR running backs who catch 4, 5, 6 catches a game can make some explosive plays, Tariq Cohen now, joining this group. Have we not been giving Andre Ellington his due? And does this game against Philadelphia look like one where, because Philadelphia's run defense is tough, so Arizona can't run the ball anyway? Is Ellington someone we should consider, not including this week, but really going forward, as it seems like he's in his comfortable role again?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is a full circle situation where you can look at it and say he hasn't been getting his due. Bruce Arians didn't treat him well, and he's his talent has been there all along. Well, part of that's true. His talent has been there all along. He's been a certain fit, but Bruce Arians, his fit with the offense, what he wanted in the offensive system is a back who could run between the tackles, who didn't need extra work in terms of developing patience and timing. And he got that from Chris Johnson, who was a much better player at that point 2 years ago. But Chris Johnson's dropped off a bit in terms of his ability to maintain the level of intensity of play that a running back needs to have every down, and it's just not showing up for him. And that line hasn't been all that good or supportive for a player like him. And then on top of it, you got David Johnson hurt. Kerwin Williams is kind of a back who offers what Ellington offers, but not quite as good as Ellington. So I think what you're looking at here is Bruce Arians is desperate and he needs a back. And Ellington was a guy that they were willing to get rid of and trying to convert at a different position. And then we're like, well, he's going to have to make it as a running back. And Ellington played just well enough that Arians probably just kind of grumbled and said, okay, good, we'll keep him on the roster. And then when the injuries happened, he's probably, just very fortunate that it all worked out this way. So yeah, Ellington has always had these skills. Is he going to be a great player for you in fantasy? I think the answer is likely not, based on what we've seen. But what we have seen is that he's going to get used enough that you can look at him as kind of a Duke Johnson-like player, which is, will he have that kind of upside? Duke Johnson's been getting a good bit of work lately. So I would say he does have that kind of upside. I just don't think it's going to be an every week deal for him.
Gene, on this, while we're on Arizona's backfield for a second, anything going on the David Johnson front? The questions, a few more each week trickle in. Should we be adding David Johnson? Should we be trying, even in redraft leagues, to make a spot for him? Has anything changed since his original injury and the time frame that put him back between Thanksgiving and Christmas?
Did people drop David Johnson? Is David Johnson available on some waiver wires? If so, stop listening right now.
Yeah,
and go put him on your roster. Unless you're in a roster where you have like one bench spot and you're in the middle of the bye weeks and there's other issues going on. David Johnson is going to come back this year. He just needs to be cleared for contact, and when that happens, there's no issue with him getting into recondition. He just has to get into football shape a little bit, being ready to take hits, being cleared for contact. When that happens, no, he may not see 30 touches the first week back, but Bruce Arians said a couple of weeks ago, our offense struggles because when David Johnson's on the field, we're either giving it to him, throwing it to him, or faking it to him. That's the Arizona offense. And with the offensive line struggles they've had, which go into why Andre Ellington is getting the ball more often, so that Carson Palmer doesn't take a beating. And with John Brown and J.J. Nelson struggling to practice and no one really being sure whether or not they're going to be available the following week, you have to change your game plan up a little bit. So I think there's a good argument for, if it's not the first week back, it's the next week back when David Johnson is ready to go, where he's back in his usual situation, and there's not that much risk of another injury here. He's probably going to play with a splint. Maybe there's some ball security issues. Maybe he drops a pass now and then because of that, but I don't think there's a big issue. What you hope is, similar to the discussion we had with Danny Woodhead, is that you hear him being cleared to do a lot more in practice as soon as he's able to do so, which is 6 weeks after he was put on injured reserve. So if by some chance he's out there, or you're in a very shallow roster league, do not wait until you hear that David Johnson has returned to practice, because then you've got a fight on your hands. I hope that you didn't drop. Yes, there was a concern that it was going to be an 8 to 12 week injury and maybe he wouldn't be back until the fantasy playoffs and this and that and the other, but too much upside. This is not a torn hamstring or a broken foot bone or something like that could result in issues in the month to 6 weeks when he comes back. When he's cleared to play, his only limitation is going to be how well will he handle the ball in the splint, and that's it. So yeah, I hope he's not. If he is, you've probably already stopped listening to me talk and gone, right. But should not be an issue.
Gene, as you asked the question, Gene's eyes went,
what? Yeah, Wait, I didn't remember.
It's like an all-time top 10.
Did I tell people to drop David Johnson?
No, you did.
I hope I did not. So.
But getting some questions, even questions about trades, even questions about some dynasty trades. Don't sell David Johnson in a dynasty league right now. Don't do that. Let's talk really quickly about Green Bay. We got news that Devontae Adams is going to play and Ty Montgomery is not going to play. Really, what comes to mind here, Gene, is this going to be a rinse repeat situation for Ty Montgomery for a while, or was he close enough to playing this week that we can look ahead to next week and expect to see him against Minnesota?
Well, they let him do some individual drills in essentially full pads. They don't really go full pads during the week, but he had a helmet and shoulder pads on and cleats, and they allowed him to do that to see what his comfort level was in that vest. Now, I don't think, knowing that the Packers medical staff is definitely on the conservative side, that they were going to put him out there in a situation where he was not going to be able to be himself. Even a pain-killing injection and all the Kevlar in the world is not going to protect you from having pain and limitation with multiple broken ribs. And I think there's no debate now that that's what's going on with Montgomery. And the same thing goes for the Packers. They've got a couple of divisional games coming up. They're a little bit further away from the bye maybe than you'd like to see in terms of getting some of these guys that they've been trying to nurse through injuries for weeks healthy. I got a lot of questions this morning about whether Montgomery would be able to play next week. I think it's possible. I think how Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams potentially look today may have as much to do with how much Montgomery does next week as how Montgomery feels, because he's not going to be healed next week, but he's probably going to feel good enough where if they needed him to give it a go, they would. But if they get Bulaga and Bakhtiari back today and Aaron Jones looks pretty good, we're probably not going to see Ty Montgomery take 90% of the snaps and touches in the future. So I think how the rookies play today, how the offensive line gels today, how the Packers' overall offense plays today has as much to do with whether or not we'll see Montgomery and how much we will next week as anything else.
Matt, it's been for Aaron Jones fantasy stock, it's been quite a roller coaster ride starting last Thursday. And last Thursday, you did an excellent job breaking him down. I guess I want to cast this in let's play a game. Pick your favorite waiver wire running back this week. And also, you can give us any strong takes that you might fade somebody. And you broke some of these players down in depth in the gut check. But on the waiver wire this week, and it ties into some injury situations, Aaron Jones, who we talked about. Wayne Gallman ties into the Paul Perkins injury situation. Also, Ben McAdoo's not on the hot seat. Why? Don't answer that unless you want to. We've got J.D. McKissick, who's going to be playing in place of C.J. Precise and Elijah McGuire. So, and again, the year of the rookie running back, right? 4 rookie running backs: Aaron Jones, Wayne Gallman, J.D. McKissick, Elijah McGuire. If you have to dig deep for one, does any one of them stand out, or any one of them say, yeah, I see a reason there to give him a shot?
Well, I think all of them have reasons to give them a shot if you're looking at if you need a running back. So, I mean, let's just take them one by one. I mean, the Aaron Jones situation is potentially a nice one for this week and maybe next week. But the factors that are involved there are that the Green Bay Packers, even with Ty Montgomery, their longest run of the year was 13 yards, 13-yard run. That was their best run of the year. So that tells you that the offensive line hasn't been all that great. So that now that they're bolstering their offensive line with some returning starters is a good situation, and it happens at the right time. But here's a scenario. The reason that Aaron Jones was number 3 on this list wasn't because of his running ability. It was because he wasn't a known quantity as a pass protector. He's a very good pass receiver. So what kind of happens here is this. Well, the run game opened enough creases that even Jamal Williams, who has looked kind of stiff with his running style this year, it's almost like the Green Bay Packers and the media kept saying all summer long, Jamal Williams is a thumper. He's a hammer. He's a power back. He's 212 pounds. Everyone still thinks he's 230 from whatever weird listing that's been about him on the BYU site for the past 2 years. He's always played at 212 pounds. So, and he's always had some wiggle to his game and some good change of direction. The problem is that he hasn't shown that. It's almost like he's bought into the idea the same way Reggie Bush bought in too much to the idea that he was supposed to be a game breaker all the time, and changed his running style to a degree earlier in his career to where he was way immature. And I almost think that Williams is playing too tight. Jones hasn't played too tight at all. So, the situation is this: even if Williams is playing tight and this line is opening creases and he can pass protect better, and Jones makes a big mistake in pass pro or doesn't secure the ball, then Williams may be the default guy. And then Ty Montgomery comes back. And unless Williams just goes big, and starts playing the way that he used to play in terms of a little more comfort level, then it's going to be Montgomery's job again. But if both of them play well and they find a good balance, and especially Jones, if Jones can really show how comfortable he looked in limited time last week and transfer that to this week, you may see Montgomery on the bench a little bit while. So I would say that Jones is probably your best bet this week because of just the comfort level that he showed. He's your best bet of the two backs in Green Bay. Gallman's probably the best bet on paper of all the backs, mainly because this offensive line, they're opening just enough that he's able to get creases. He has very good burst. He's not a long speed guy, but he's got good burst, good pad level. He's strong, and he's someone that he's kind of a quicker version of Jamal Williams in the way that Jamal Williams is playing stiff right now. So if he's a little better in that way, and he catches the ball well. So on paper, it's probably a better matchup, especially against a Chargers defense that has no linebackers to speak of who can tackle. They've actually lead the league in missed tackles, and just about when you even look at David Dodd's game predictor, he's predicting 108 yards for the New York Giants on the ground, which it seems low compared to everything else that he's predicted, but that's actually very high considering that's based on Giants averages right now before Gallman has really made an impact at all. And Gallman is the best bet. So I expect a much bigger game than even what the stats say for the game predictor. And then you look at McGuire. McGuire's played well, but I suspect, he's got good burst. He can make the first man miss. He has good vision. He's a good all-around back. He kind of reminds me of a little heavier Duke Johnson in some regards, but I think Duke Johnson's a more talented player. He's had a really big run, and he broke something, and so that he's flashed some really nice moments. I'm just not sure that we're not looking at a Lee Suggs kind of situation here, where, a couple of big runs back in the day, and then we're all excited about a guy that he'd be last on my list at this stage. But if you need somebody for 1 week, then yeah, there you go.
Yeah, you bring up a good point about Gallman because that Giants rushing performance this week really is at the intersection of teams have run all over the Chargers this year, and the Giants won't commit to the run. And which comes back around to why isn't Ben McAdoo on the hot seat? Another aspect to this game, Gene, Olivier Vernon not going to play. It doesn't look like he's going to play. And
I don't think so.
Jason Pierre-Paul playing through another. It just seems like a common refrain now. Jason Pierre-Paul's playing through something, but does that then? And Tyrell Williams on the other side of this matchup is going to play. So when you add all these things together, does it make you more willing to play Phillip Rivers? Does it make you more willing to play Tyrell Williams? We also know that the Giants can't defend the tight end. We see BJ Goodson, the back of his jersey, running down the field, chasing whoever the tight end is every week. Is it a Hunter Henry week? When you factor in how much is the Giants defense, how much is it based on, Eli Apple and Dominic Rodgers-Cromartie and Janoris Jenkins and Landon Collins? How much is it based on Vernon and Pierre being able to get that pressure, and how should we expect that pressure this week?
There's a lot going on there.
Yeah,
I think I'm going to leave. Phillip Rivers is an interesting cat this year. There were some worries about Rivers in week 1, but he threw 3 touchdowns against Denver. And then I thought he looked a little bit better last week, but in between, man, it has been a mess. There are a couple of offensive linemen that I think are struggling through injuries out there. Melvin Gordon, hopefully with a full practice this week, has concerns behind him. They won't have Brandon Oliver, so Gordon has to be ready to shoulder some of the load. And I think that if that happens, then Rivers is in a better spot to be productive. And yes, the Giants have always been pass rush first, opportunity in the secondary second type of a defense. And I think Vernon wants to play, but he seemed resigned on Friday afternoon that it just didn't make any sense. He's just got to allow himself to get better. Tried to go last week and wasn't effective and barely played any snaps at all. Pierre-Paul is kind of frustrated that he's continued to deal with these chronic shoulder issues over the past couple of years, but swore up and down that not only was he going to play, but he was upset that he hadn't been as productive as he felt he should have been, which means you're probably going to see a pants on fire Jason Pierre-Paul, which is never a good thing, especially if you have concerns about Joe Barksdale. today. So a lot going on there. I'm going to let you guys talk about Phillip Rivers because I have questions about how that San Diego offense is going to perform as well. And it's because I think you've got questions at every level. And I think the tight end question is a good one. The Giants linebackers are not going to be getting any better. All of those guys are still banged up a little bit. And the Giants haven't prioritized the linebacker position in years. So you're dealing with a bunch of barely above replacement level guys that you hope to hide because you've got opportunistic secondary players and a good pass rush. So I'll leave it to you guys. I'm interested to see what you think about Rivers and the rest.
Interesting cat, indeed. And I think what happened against Kansas City, and when we watch Phillip Rivers have meltdown games, it's not like a Joe Flacco meltdown game. It's not a game where he looks overmatched. It's a game when he's trying things that aren't going to work, or he's taking a riskier choice over a safer choice. And he's not the type to respond to external stimulus. He's going to listen to that shouting voice in his head, shouting at him to do things like he shouts at everybody. But rational coaching would have a lot of Hunter Henry, a lot of Antonio Gates. Man, this is a fascinating matchup, even though it's 2-0-4 teams. In chime in against the gumbo that I threw, everything in the pot there when I tossed that at Gene. But also, I'll add this on. Mike Williams is supposed to return next week. As people are setting their lineups this week and looking for last-second waiver wire pickups, you have an extra spot. Is it worth it to add Mike Williams at this point to see what happens?
I mean, if you're choosing him and some running back that you've never heard of, then maybe possibly I would look at it from that standpoint. But Phillip Rivers, I mean, I got a narrative for you, all right? Phil, long commutes sneak up on you. He's commuting like an hour and a half to practice every day,
right,
from where he lives. He's still
Southern California traffic. It's no fun.
Yeah. So, I mean, even though he's not the one driving, apparently, I think commutes probably still catch up with you, and that it makes your day longer, and when you're on the road sitting in I don't care how comfortable the limo is. It probably can't be that comfortable, or whatever town car or whatever the Chargers are supplying for him to ride around in after you've been beaten up, the week before. So I think that there may be something to just kind of the odd rhythm of getting ready and playing that may actually contribute there on a smaller level. But I think the bigger thing is just simply that the Chargers have not been able to integrate their run game with their passing game. And what I mean by that is when you look at teams that that are successful, they tend, like the Falcons are a perfect example of a team that has a great offense in terms of it's integrated between run and pass. They're effective in terms of how they run the ball. It's really it's predominant on Devonta Freeman running up the middle and on the edges. When they put Coleman in there, you often see him used in ways that the defense is expecting pass, and they let him run the ball. Or they use him on the outside after the team has been kind of tired out and they know it's coming, but they can't stop it. And then they can turn right around and do a lot of passing concepts based off play action off the run that get their receivers wide open. And I think that when you look at the Chargers offense, you don't see a lot of play action that works well off of the run game. And part of that is that Phillip Rivers is not a mobile guy, and he does not really sell the play action very well anymore at this stage. He barely did when he was younger. So they just happen to have, back in the day, they also ran the I formation a lot with Marty Schottenheimer using the I and having LaDainian Tomlinson. And LaDainian Tomlinson could, make Bernie Kosar on one leg look like a sellable play action quarterback. So it was that's kind of the difference there. Melvin Gordon's just not healthy enough to really get the job done, and the offensive line isn't strong enough. They don't have that run mentality. It's more of a shotgun running game, and that's the difference there. So on paper, I'd really love to start Rivers. I have Rivers and Dak Prescott in the league, and I'm sitting here looking at this, and at first I started Rivers because I was thinking, well, on paper, all these crossing routes that they run with the tight end and with Keenan Allen and with Tyrell Williams, that's their bread and butter, is these crossing route offense. That's going to be great against these Giants linebackers. And then I think, then Rivers is going to, he's going to get desperate because they're going to get behind early maybe, and then he's going to throw the ball up into double coverage from across the field on like a 2nd down and 12. And you're going to go, you saw the inkling of it open. It's going to get intercepted. And now the team's not going to have the ball for about 8 minutes. And that's going to happen like once or twice in the game. And it's going to keep happening because now you're down, a couple of scores. I just don't want to risk that now. And I'm thinking, well, Dak's a little bit of a safer play even against Green Bay's defense. So, for me, it's a frustrating scenario. And I just think that there are a number of plays into it. And I think the number one thing is the integration of the run and pass game and them getting down early and Phillip Rivers, like you said, having to do a little bit more and taking riskier chances, trying to put more on himself rather than letting the game unfold as it is. And he pushes a little too hard. Number two, I do wonder about his prep. And I wonder about this whole, like, if I were a job, an employer, and I was like, you're going to commute from San Diego to LA every day. Yeah. Okay. Well, when is he retiring? But I mean, that's kind of it would be a concern for me. So no, I wouldn't feel good about that. Maybe over Case Keenum.
Yeah. Well, and this was a team without a home, and this is a pretty rare situation in the NFL. The last team that I can remember like this was the Saints post Katrina. And this was a team that went 3-13, and it did usher in the Drew Brees era.
And this is a guy who has more kids than like a Dunkin' Donuts box. I mean, like he's got like a dozen kids, and he
Lance Zierlein always brings that up. Lance Zierlein always, when we would talk about Phillip Rivers, I always say, but how can you think about football with all those kids?
Yeah, and that's what I'm thinking. It's like you've got, if you're an employer, this is one of those situations as a manager that really kind of stinks, because if you're a coach or a general manager, you've got this great leader who's terrific in the clubhouse. He's been proven, he's tough, he's smart, all these things, but he's got he's the old woman in the shoe. And at the same time, he's going to want to travel. You kind of want to give him the benefit of the doubt and give him those things. But if he were a second-year player, you'd be like, no, man, you need to find a place here, and you need to figure out what you need to do. What's important for you in terms of what you're doing. But the team knows the answer. They don't have anybody to answer to put behind Phillip Rivers and say, look, Phil, they don't have any leverage against him at this point to do what they need to do. What's best for the team. And I think that they're just like, well, if there's somebody who can handle it, it'll be him.
Yeah, they're in a bad spot. It'll be interesting to see. They keep denying that the move back to San Diego is on the table, but I don't know if they're going to stay in LA. Gene, I want to prevail
back to San Diego. That's just yeah.
You can't go home. Everyone's at the beach enjoying the wonderful year-round temperate weather.
Go back to San Diego.
Yeah. Gene, I want to prevail upon your defensive.
I want to go to San Diego.
I want to go.
Me too.
I do too. I want to go to Del Mar. Yeah, exactly. I know a lot of good places too. Greg Williams' defense in Cleveland, Gene. The last 2 weeks, Jacoby Brissett and T.Y. Hilton got it going. Last week, Andy Dalton got it going. This has seemed like a pushover defense, but it's a Greg Williams defense, and this is tapping back into what you remember about Greg Williams defenses, but also they do get Myles Garrett back, and going to your injury expertise, how effective can we expect Myles Garrett? But we've also seen Emmanuel Ogbah. Some of these picks for the Browns, and this is where I'll throw a little sunshine to Browns Nation, Matt. Some of these picks are starting to fall into place. Jamie Collins hasn't come back from his concussion yet, Gene, but Myles Garrett's going to be back. And now you have the potential of those pinchers with Ogbah playing well and Garrett being back. Does that change the complexion of what has seemed to be an extremely vulnerable secondary against mediocre quarterbacks that weren't doing much in the passing game going into their matchup against the Browns?
My first thought when you started that question was they got to get a cornerback somewhere. And hopefully some of the picks that they've stockpiled leads to that in the future, because I think you're right. I think, when they get Jamie Collins back from his concussion, and it's unclear when that's going to happen, when Myles Garrett is fully over this ankle injury, and that's not necessarily going to be this week, when some of those young guys, I haven't been super impressed with Carl Nassib and Emmanuel Ogbah, but those young type of pass rushers take time to develop, and it takes a little bit of time to assimilate Greg Williams' aggressive multiple front scheme. So he's eventually, hopefully, if he lasts there long enough, going to have scheme and talent on his side. But Offenses can scheme around pressure in some ways and put pressure on the secondary. And yes, there's talent there. You like Jabril Peppers. Jason McCourty is a veteran that brings a little bit of talent to the secondary, but there has to be somebody in the back that can make plays. The difference between what you see with Cleveland and what you see with the Giants is Janoris Jenkins is a playmaker. Landon Collins is a playmaker. Eli Apple may turn into something over time. And you look at the Cleveland secondary, and maybe Peppers grows into that, but you just don't see it yet. So you have to be able to take advantage of the times where pressures don't turn into sacks. And Josh Norris says, disruption is production, but the production comes on the back end. The production has to be there from the guys that take advantage of the disruption that's occurred. And I don't think they're there yet. Myles Garrett, what you saw in the preseason, one of the rare players that's probably, yes, he's going to continue to get better, but is going to be on the Julius Peppers, J.J. Watt scale, where they are effective immediately and then only get better. So, hopefully by the second half of the season, you see a Garrett who's not limited at all by the ankle injury. He's really only been able to be limited in practice, so I don't think that we're going to see him play a significant number of snaps today, but hopefully he has an impact on the one that he is able to play.
I just have to wonder if, Joe Hayden read something at the local Heinens while he was checking out at the cashier and saw something from Tony Grossi, and he just completely lost his mind and got Greg Williams really mad. He just finally had enough of Cleveland, just like the whole insanity just finally got to him, kind of like the castaway who just finally lost his mind from the stress of the situation. And they just had to get rid of him. They just had to put his career down,
I'm going to Pittsburgh. That's right. I'm done. Leaving Cleveland in the rearview mirror. Gene, really quick while I'm on this Cleveland matchup, how much longer? Do you have a good read on how much longer we can expect to enjoy Bilal Powell as the starting running back?
No. The initial indication, I think it was Ian Rappaport that had the tweet out there that said this was going to be a multiple week injury, and Forte hasn't started practicing yet. So the longer this goes, and I always feel like once you go 2 weeks without practicing, you probably need a week of reconditioning before you can start to prepare for a game. So I think there's at least one more week after that, and it could certainly be longer.
Yeah, and next week, New England and the Jets. So that one is definitely going to be fun to watch. I'm really looking forward to seeing Myles Garrett today. I think, as you said, he's going to be an instant impact player. I want to ask about Buffalo and Cincinnati, and particularly Matt. And I followed your lead. I'm like that race car drafting off of you sometimes. And I know we're on opposite sides of that hyperactive 2 league, and I love it when I see you and I are making the same pickups and bidding about the same as we did last week for Tyler Croft. And you've detailed, and this is one of those ones where, and it makes so much sense when you just look at it, but I think you're the only person. I think you're responsible for like 75% of what Tyler Croft hype there is in the fantasy world. And what I mean by that is there isn't. But we saw Tyler Eifert as potentially able to create a ton of touchdowns as he had in the past. Tyler Croft was the 3rd round pick. I wasn't that impressed with what I saw with him at Rutgers. And when Eifert wasn't able to play at the beginning of the year last year, we thought, okay, this is an opportunity for Croft. Then he gets hurt in the preseason. He gets a knee. Maybe some of it is he never gets over that knee. You're seeing things with Croft. Tell people what you're seeing and whether he might be an answer to a desperation tight end play or a stash in a dynasty league. Because it just makes sense that the Tyler era we might be going from Tyler 1 to Tyler 2, and nobody's realizing it. Because, and Gene, really quickly, just to add to this discussion, should we be concerned about Tyler Eifert long-term beyond this year?
Yes.
Yeah. So Tyler Croft.
Yeah, it's funny because several years ago when Croft was at Rutgers, a scout talked to me and said, have you watched him? And my answer was no, not yet. And he said, I actually like him long-term as a tight end who has some ability, if he can develop as a blocker, this is a guy that could probably be a plug-in starter for a team and be serviceable. And I watched him and I could see what he meant because he was a fluid athlete. He was someone that caught the ball well, and he was very good over the middle in terms of making plays in traffic and doing it on the move and catching the ball in stride. Just a lot of very natural components to his game. But she didn't look at him as someone like Eifert who could jump out of a gym and, was going to get people all excited about his athletic ability. He was a good enough athlete to play in the NFL where the skills were enough to shine. And, there are a lot of tight ends like that. What was nice about last week is you could see how much confidence that Andy Dalton had in him and the way that the offense worked with him. And it's really a natural fit for a tight end because it just shows you. I mean, I've always liked Tyler Eifert, but I've never been in love with Tyler Eifert's game. And I don't think I've ever had him on a fantasy team. I just can't do it. I don't know why. There's some things about him, his game, that just doesn't always jive for me. But Cincinnati, when you have this over-the-top greatness in A.J. Green, and then you have a player like Giovanni Bernard and now Joe Mixon, who's effective in the screen game and the outside run game as well, it's just a natural to have that tight end filtering in the shallow zone and the intermediate zone as a guy that's going to be wide open at times and is going to be able to make some plays. And I think that when you look at what Croft did last week is that, he had a seam route that he was able to make a leaping catch and take a hit and get somersaulted into the end zone for a score. He had his first score was a really nice stop route where that he made a man miss, turn upfield to get another some more yards in the red zone for a score. And what was impressive about both those two plays, I mean, the first one was very apparent. He'd make plays after contact, and he was able to leap for the ball. So, you look at that and you see that noticeably as the athletic component that gets people excited. But the stop route to me was more exciting because you could see him do things that a lot of veteran tight ends who are older do at their best, and why people are like, oh, they're past their prime. We should get rid of Antonio Gates. We should get rid of Tony Gonzalez. We should get rid of plug in whoever's, above the age of 31 and may have had an injury at one point, and then they play 3 more years in the top 10 of your fantasy leagues. The thing that they do is that they're very sudden at their turn on these stop routes because they're being covered by linebackers or safeties. And when you can snap that turn and really be sudden with it, you get that enough separation right there to catch the ball and make a move. And Tyler Croft has that. There are a lot of athletic prospects who are 3 years into their career, 4 years into their career, who still haven't figured out that they needed to work on that after they got drafted in the first 2 to 3 rounds because they ran a seam route fast and they could outrun a linebacker who's never going to make it in the NFL, but everyone's, drooling over the fact that he can run, a 4.5 840 or a 4.6 340. Tyler Croft may not be that guy, but he knows what he's supposed to do, and he knows how to do it, and it's showing up in trust and in targets, and we'll see if it continues to happen with tougher matchups as we go. I think the tools are there for him to exploit it, and he's worth taking a shot on.
And as we got just a few minutes left, I want to wind up with the best matchup of the week, and it's tonight. Gene, I'll let you weigh in on a Quienes Mas Macho game here, because and I'm going to go down narrative street here as I want to all the time. And you can add some detail if you want on these injuries, but we do have Kansas City returned their offensive line continuity, but Mitch Morse out, Laurent Duvernay-Tardif
also out. Yes,
also out. So, and you got J.J. Watt and you got Jadeveon Clowney. He's making some things happen. But you also have Kareem Hunt. You also have Travis Kelce, although actually Brian Cushing being hurt might help the matchup for them here. And you have Tyreek Hill. And then on the flip side, you got Deshaun Watson in this Kansas City defense. Derek Johnson in his decline phase. That's kind of sad to see. They lost Eric Berry. This is a really interesting matchup where, you could see this one a wide range when you what we know about these two teams at this point and the trajectory of these two teams, starting with that, the matchup that I think obviously favors Houston now, defensive line against a banged up offensive line. What do you see in your crystal ball tonight?
I think that's exactly what you see. And no D Ford this week either, which is also big, because I think one of the ways Kansas City stays in games is to rush the passer effectively. Again, they don't have anybody in the middle of the field that's great at defending. I think the secondary is probably a little bit better than folks would want to give it credit for, both safety and cornerback, even though Marcus Peters has struggled a little bit recently. I still think that's a very good defense, and hopefully you're just seeing a little bit of fatigue from Derek Johnson and truly not the very quick backslide of her career. I don't know how I see this one going. I think lots of points being scored is possible. And also the defense, and particularly the pass rushers taking over, is possible. I know I've said this a couple of times this year. It's just one of those situations where you can see a wide range of outcomes, and that's the fun. And one of the reasons why everybody's interested in this matchup is there's playmakers all over the place on both sides of the ball. And you hope you see those guys take advantage rather than the mess that we saw from New Orleans and Los Angeles last Sunday morning.
Yeah, well, and Matt, as we'll sign off with this game, one of the reasons this one's really fascinating is we know Kansas City is one of the elite teams in the NFL. Whatever happens in this game, Kansas City, they could get jumped in the alley tonight. Houston, they're excited about the Astros. They're excited about this team, and we know that Kansas City is going to be a team in the mix that we're talking about going to the Super Bowl, especially now that we see that New England truly is mortal this year. Kansas City was the first one to show us that. But Houston is a fascinating team because they went into New England and almost won. They absolutely thumped Tennessee, who some might consider the biggest rival for them to win the division again. And if they can handle a Kansas City team, and they have the narrative in-house about Deshaun Watson changing this team, if they ever get a quarterback, well, they finally got a quarterback. And the fantasy background here is Deshaun Watson has been a week winner for you the last 2 weeks. Why wouldn't you play him this week? Or perhaps is this the week that you're not playing New England, you're not playing Tennessee, you're playing the Chiefs, you're playing a defense that is going to give him more to handle. And we're getting to that point now where the league might have a little bit more to try to exploit with him. This one's fascinating. What are you going to be watching when you watch it tonight?
Yeah, I mean, I watch 10 to 12 games a week between Sunday night and Monday morning, or Sunday after, about noon till about Monday at about, 2 p.m. And so there's some games that I can't watch every week. And for the past 2 weeks, I haven't watched Deshaun Watson. I haven't had, when I've looked at tiebreaker games that I've needed to look at, he just wasn't one of them. But every week I've been like, I want to see him. I know Kansas City's on the schedule. That game I am watching, because provides a really good test for what people say is wrong with Watson's game, which is how good is he at really being able to fire decent velocity throws at the sideline against attacking cornerbacks who are going to try and jump routes. And if he tries to do that and he fails, we're going to see that pretty immediately with the Kansas City Chiefs defense with Peters and with these safeties. Now, if they're smart and they play to what Watson's strengths are, then you're going to see a lot of sail routes and not even comebacks, sail routes and some sort of back shoulder fades. And you're going to see opportunities where when he goes deep, it's going to be based on those types of more finesse throws where it's going to be timing and touch and anticipation. And if he hits on those, which is still going to be tough against this Chiefs defense, then you're going to feel pretty good about what's going on there. But if he gets forced into doing things that is supposedly his weakness and he can't do it, you're going to see him exposed a little bit more this week, even without the pass rush at the level that it should be at. But we still got, Houston, right? Justin Houston, nothing happened to him, right?
He's playing as well as he's played in his career right now.
Justin Houston is having a monstrous year. So, that's a guy I think I detailed the first 3 weeks in the top 10 because every week he was doing something that was just amazing. So, yeah, D Ford would really help out on the other side if, but I don't see anything in that Houston offensive line that gets me all that excited about a great matchup against Houston. So I think Houston, and Chris Jones isn't bad in terms of being able to wreck a pocket. So I think that when you look at this scenario, this is going to be the best test for Deshaun Watson this week. I'm interested in seeing whether or not Will Fuller can catch a football anymore and whether he's actually figured out that the jugs machine is his friend and gotten some technique down. And if not, Bruce Ellington may still be viable. Bruce Ellington may still be viable with Fuller on the field because Fuller is the type of receiver that's based on those speed routes. It's based on those high velocity throws that you've got to fit it over different people or you got to show some velocity. Whereas with Ellington, all his career at South Carolina, he was catching those deep sail routes and those corner routes and crossing routes and things that Deshaun Watson does great. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if people are like completely jumping off the Bruce Ellington train and they're getting on Will Fuller and they're going to find out that a wheel pops off on the rail and Ellington just keeps on chugging right past them on the other track. So that's another aspect that I really want to watch here when it comes to Houston is Watson, those two receivers outside. Who's going to win out there? Is one going to actually just enhance the other, or are they going to kind of cannibalize each other's carries or touches?
Yeah, this is going to be a fun one, fun week to watch as we march through the day. You know, in the afternoon, we're going to get Green Bay and Dallas. We're going to get a Seattle Rams game that Matt and I talked about at length on Thursday night. And then that really fascinating Kansas City Houston game. And just getting a chance to watch J.J. Watt and Justin Houston. And Jadeveon Clowney is starting to become what we hoped he could become as a player that can influence games. Always influencing you here on Sunday mornings, on Thursday nights, Audible marching through. Of course, Gene Bramall in the injury rounds. You're following him, Gene Bramall. Matt Waldman at Matt Waldman. And the top 10, the gut check. And very soon coming up, a return to the couch as always. We always look forward to that. We always look forward to spending time with you. We look forward to spending time with the NFL. We appreciate you supporting what we do. It's a joy. It's a pleasure. It's a privilege always to serve you because you stay classy.